step over and over to the green room, that would be great. Thank you very much, sir. And we have our timers in here. Oh, there you are. Okay. So thank you very much. We're coming on in, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon. We want to thank you for your presence here and for your commitment to our community and to Akron and to sustainability and to the environment. So thank you for being here with your generosity and openness to learning. Thank you. Our candidates can come out now. So we've, the audience is here. We've thanked the audience and we want to thank you. Thank you for making a commitment to lead us. It's a sacrifice. We recognize that, each in your own different way, but we appreciate that you have committed to come and speak to us and hear from us. And we want you to know that whoever becomes mayor, we will be with you while you're mayor. And we'll continue to support you and to move back and forward. And it's in that spirit that we're here today to have a discussion. So thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Environmental Coalition that has put this together. So those who have fans, raise your hands, thank you. And we also want to thank the host, Tony Trophy, and the space. We recognize this, yes. We recognize this is the essence of development, repurposing facilities to bring back the spirit of the community and use that as the core of placemaking. So thank you. And we also want to thank our other hosts, Phil Neighbors and Lester C. Market. Both of these gentlemen are our champions of sustainability. They have been local businesses over the last couple of decades that exude those values, and we very much love and appreciate them. We're going to start our forum with a film.
Much the Green Heart Project to obtain real and direct evidence of the relationship between nature and health. We are looking at it very critically as a great opportunity to restore health.
We are looking at the environment in a much more rigorous way than has ever been done, and we're using trees essentially as a pill.
Yes!
Yeah, I am one with the earth.
This is actually a major milestone. This is the first day we actually get to start the greening intervention, the planting of the community to begin to test the health effects.
This is a $15 million 6-year longitudinal clinical trial. It's unprecedented. There is no other project like this in the world.
No one has planted trees the size we're planting out here along the highway in the quantities and the densities that we're planting anywhere in Louisville's history.
You look at all the benefits of living near greenness. One of the most profound benefits is in cardiovascular disease.
There are thousands of cities around the world that are struggling with air pollution issues. We know that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of people globally. We're looking at air quality, the mechanism the canopy plays in filtering air pollution, and therefore the health effects on the population and the community that lives here.
If you don't see the relationship between plants and clean air, then you just haven't gotten it.
When we first started the Green Art Project, we thought it was important for improving the health of the community. Now, with this COVID pandemic, we've learned how spending time in nature to improve our resilience, our immunity, our mental health, and our ability to cope with this pandemic.
We know that we can't have healthy communities at any level within any socioeconomic branch without having healthy communities at all socioeconomic branches.
We have such disparity in our community. We have one of the most segregated cities. Our country is segregated. Our world is segregated. Rich, poor, black, white, and then this pandemic comes. And now we see how connected we are.
If we learn the lesson from this pandemic, that it is not just our own health and our own little world that we can create an island to exist on, but that we need to work towards making a healthy community where people don't die prematurely. These things are not difficult to achieve. They're within our grasp. We just need the social will to accomplish that.
How would it feel to a community that feels left out and unseen all of a sudden to be prioritized? I cannot imagine the difference in life expectancy in that community. And I don't mean years, I mean quality. And if you improve the quality, then the quantity would go up too.
I hope that there will be another Green Art project somewhere else in the world, maybe 3 or 4 more, to give everybody, policymakers, the general public, the confidence that this is actually a very real, investable, workable phenomenon.
We know that Akron has a green heart. That's what we do. And that's who we want you to know who we are. Akron has done a lot over the years to address issues related to mitigating the impacts of warming climate. Those efforts include signing the International Kyoto Protocol on Climate Change, developing the Akron Green Print and Renewable Energy Facility, adoption of the integrated plan, and the $1.4 billion investments in the Akron Waterways Renewed Program to address violations of the Clean Water Act. Those efforts have resulted in Akron's state-of-the-art water reclamation facility and positioned Akron once again as a leader in clean water and the green jobs economy. The pace of climate change, however, calls for our governance and management strategies to integrate adaptation and resilience methodologies at even greater pace than previously understood. If we are to achieve a 50% reduction of emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. Over the course of the last 3 years, Akronites in this room and many more have come forward collectively to protect the human and environmental assets of our region, to ensure the health, safety, and economic welfare of Akron. Residents have clearly spoken and stated in the recently conducted Akron Decides survey that the next mayor of Akron must be visionary and have a reform agenda. The same poll, which clearly ranked public safety as the highest concern, also showed us the majority, more than 80% of Akronites want to stay in the community and be a part of the change. Most notably, 62% stated they favored environmental sustainability over economic value as the focus of new housing in the city. As Akron embarks on a change of leadership at an unprecedented moment, we invite you to share your vision for a more prosperous future that protects and does not deplete its natural assets and invests in its people and neighborhoods. As our moderator, we invite Barb Hipsman from Kent State University Journalism, Professor Emeritus.
I've been a political journalist most of my career, but more taught at Penn State in the school of journalism, public affairs reporting, and media ethics for many years after being a political reporter. Many of you know or knew my husband, Bob Springer, who was an op-ed page editor at the Beacon. So we consider ourselves half acronyms. Half as acronyms. And after I taught at Penn State, of course, all through there, I was active in the League of Women Voters in Kent. And since I teach so much at podiums and around, I've probably done hundreds of these. So I'm hoping that we'll keep a general peppy tune today. We ask that lots of applause be held until the end of a sequence of questions. So I will ask a question and then they may answer as we go along. There are timers in the front, I understand, who will give, it's all gentlemen today. And there'll be a high sign from the first row here, and we'll move along. So we're going to ask a series of questions in the forum. And we'll start first with an icebreaker question, and then proceed to more specific questions related to the natural, built, and cultural environment of our city. So you'll have a minute to give us your whole ideas on these. But our timers, again, will remind you, we'll try to get through as many of our predetermined questions as possible, but we're going to leave about a half an hour at the end to answer your audience submitted questions. If you have a question at any time to submit, raise your hand and someone from the back or the front will come and hand you a notepad and you can write down the question. Please write legibly on them when I ask to read them. Though most of the questions are open-ended, some questions are simply yes, no, and we will note those. But to start today, we're going to do an icebreaker. That's really easy. What does the environment mean to you? And for this, I will start across and then I'll come back and edge down. So we're going to start with you, Tara Mosley, who is really Lucas.
Hi, everybody. Is this thing on? There we go. Hello? All right. All right, so the first thing you're going to notice about me is that I'm not Tara Mosley. My name's Lucas Blower. Tara sends along her apologies. She was triple booked today, but she still felt that the issues you're talking about here are important enough that she wanted somebody from her team to be here. And whenever I knew that this spot was open, I jumped at it because these issues are really, really important to me. My job is I'm an attorney, and I spend most of my time working on environmental issues. I'm an insurance recovery attorney, and most of my day is spent trying to get insurance companies to clean up environmental sites. I've done this all over the country. And, I am very, very excited to be part of Tara's team, to get the opportunity to talk to you about her views on the environment, because there are issues that are near and dear to her heart, my heart as well. And there are a lot of common sense things that we can do in this city to have a cleaner city. And I'm looking forward to talking about Tara's plan with you. All right.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Schaefer.
Hello, I'm Josh Schaefer, the most progressive candidate in the race. And what does the environment mean to me? Well, that's interesting because I'm human, right? So it means the same to me as it does to everyone else. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water, except some of us have lead in our water and some of us don't. And it's unacceptable, right? So we all suffer from climate change. All these things affect all of us. And so when I think about the future that I want for my daughter, do I want her to live in a community that has less trees and still has lead pipes? And do I want her to drink water that is subpar? And so when I think about all these things, I think about just being human and how they affect all of us. And so we should all really care about the environment as much as anyone else. Thank you.
Mr. Wilhite.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeff Wilhite, candidate for mayor. What the environment means to me is it's the one thing in all of our lives that is not in a silo. It is a commonality that we all share. It is quality of life that we all should be focused on. We have so many names and so many titles and so many silos that we put around so much in our life, but the environment is the one thing that we don't have to do that with. And the initiatives and the work that I've done my entire career has been focused on creating a better environment. And I hope to get into that a little bit more as we discuss the issues and topics this afternoon. But thank you all for coming out and being here. If today is not an example of climate change, I don't know what is. We couldn't have gotten a better day to have this forum.
How true. I had to go around 2 downed trees and a live wire, making significant changes to my route. Mr. Mills.
So my name is Keith Mills. I'm a candidate for mayor of Akron. What the environment means to me is that we live in it. It's all affected by us. Just like Jeff said, we're not, it's not a silo. What affects people countries away also affects us. Bringing up the wind today, I'm wondering where the snow was this year. It was just gone. I was only able to snowboard like twice this year. It's crazy. So, the environment, we cannot keep doing obviously the things that we've been doing for the past 30, 40, 50 years, and ignoring the repercussions. Okay, we're literally burying our head in the sand, ignoring what's happening. The environment means, to me, a future for my children, a future for your children, and your children's children. And it's like, what kind of world do we want to leave them when we're gone? Unfortunately, as humans, we can't get past ourselves to go to Mars, to go to any other place and inhabit it. That's a real thing. It's within our grasp. We get our stuff together, we could possibly do that. So this is the only home we have right now, and we must protect it.
Mr. Malik?
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today. This is our second one of these today. So the environment means 2 things to me. First, on a personal level, it's the space that we occupy. Every person deserves to have green space and peaceful space they can seek solace. I live in the Merriman Valley, and at the end of my street is Sandra Metro Park. And during COVID, I, like a lot of us, came to realize just how important that space and walking daily, just finding some peace and quiet in the turbulence of life was. Everyone deserves that, but we have folks in our community who live next to a waste transfer station that was promised to only be there for a few years, but it's been there for more than a decade. I represent a neighborhood that includes Treeside Drive. There are no trees on Treeside Drive, and we know what the impact of lack of tree canopy has. But on a more fundamental level, environment is the space that we inhabit as a whole world. And we have existential threat facing our community when it comes to climate change. And we as a city have been lagging behind. We took steps more than a decade ago, but we have to take actual steps now going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Greer, for our final comment, what does the environment mean to you?
Thank you all for being here. My name is Mark Ulysses Greer, and the environment means to me, so much of life we base around what we do and what we build and what we ourselves create. But for me, the environment is something that was created and given to us. It's really a true gift that we have the responsibility to protect, to conserve, and to preserve. So the environment is a huge and important part of the policy of every city, including here in Akron. I think we all know what happened recently in East Palestine. We had people who had their local environment horrifically impacted when that train derailed and those chemicals spilled out into the water. So we need to make sure that we are safeguarding our most precious gift and resource, and that it is what our environment is.
Thank you very much for your 6 opinions. You'll notice that Marco Somerville is not here today and did not send someone to sit in his place, which he was allowed to do. Conflict of scheduling, like so many others. The second question is complicated, so I want you each to think about it. And then we're just going to raise hands, which I think I should have everybody close your eyes so you don't see what everybody else is saying. It's a teacher would be coming up. But this is a yes/no question. The Gateway District Ordinance is the first step in an innovative cooperative model for Akron and the region to create pathways toward development that centers the environmental assets of the Cuyahoga River watershed with the economic and community needs of local businesses and citizens over the singular economic demands of developers. Relatedly, current housing and commercial buildings need to be upgraded in order to be competitive to attract visitors and residents to live, work, and play in Akron. However, the legislation to adopt such form-based code as the foundational development piece languishes. And here's the question. Will you support the Gateway District form-based code legislation as the foundation to the city's master plan within the first 100 days of your administration? It's simply a raise your hand, yes, or raise your hand, no, see, they all looked at each other. So.
Yes.
Okay, so I think they all said yes. That's a tough one. We're gonna start with Mr. Schaefer on this next round. You'll all get a chance, and if you want me to repeat any question, just say, how will all of Akron's ratepayers be ensured that their water will remain safe, clean, and affordable? So specifically, how will you mitigate the risks from toxic spills in water, air, and land, like East Palestine, but also from the prevalence of lead pipes in landlord and property owners' dwellings in underserved and vulnerable neighborhoods?
Well, first of all, the lead pipe issue is very important to me. It's unacceptable today in 2023 that people are still drinking water out of lead pipes for no other reasons, but because we can't afford, or we say we can't afford to replace the lead pipes. So that to me is unacceptable, and that's gonna be a top priority. And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
How will Akron ratepayers be ensured that their water will remain safe, clean, and affordable? And then how do you mitigate risks from toxic spills like East Palestine?
So, there's some things that I think that have to be done on a federal level, like mitigating spills. I think we would leave up to the federal government. But we know that air quality and water quality is affected by tree canopies, by wetlands. So my first thing is that we're going to protect our environment. Not only are we going to protect our wetlands and forests that exist currently, but we are going to acquire land and reforest land, and we're going to have community gardens, we're going to have community orchards, and we're going to make Akron green again.
Thank you. Mr. Wilhite?
Well, I think if I could go back to the yes gateway question first, I absolutely would support that. And in parallel with that, it has to be done with a comprehensive land use management plan in this city, across all portions of this city. Until and unless we get to that point, we're going to have opportunities that sneak in there that none of us want. So we need a comprehensive land use management plan for this city. And I'll work for that beginning the first day in office if elected. The lead pipe situation, to me, has languished way too long. I think that there are ways that we could collectively look at those individual households that still have the lead pipes, create a funding source to be able to mitigate those now. Because the issue isn't the capital cost of that right now. The issue is the health and long-term effects of the lead for those families that are drinking that water going forward. So that would have to be a priority.
Okay, Mr. Mills, remember you have 1 minute to answer the question. How will all of Akron's ratepayers be ensured that their water will remain safe and affordable? Specifically, how will you mitigate risks? And talk about lead pipes in your minute.
The lead pipes, those will get replaced. We will ensure that, under my administration, that they are replaced. We can find money for this. We can find money for other things, other frivolous things. We can find money to protect our citizens. So those will get replaced. We'll start to, hold landlords more accountable. I have plans in place for that as well, because, you cannot just buy a house and then leave and expect to make money off our community without protecting it. Also, with the ratepayers, there will be weekly checks of the water quality and air quality. We'll step those up and to make sure that the air and water are up to par. I want to know if something has impacted us at Brady Lake. I want to know if something has impacted us here in the city of Akron. And I want to know readily and they'll report to my office to let you know, so we can move fast on that.
Thank you. Mr. Malik.
Thank you. When it comes to the cost and the quality of our water, and we have invested over $1 billion in our water and sewer treatment. And what we have to do is figure out how to relieve the burden on taxpayers and ratepayers. For the first time in 20 years, we have a member of Congress, Congresswoman Amelia Strong-Sykes, who lives in Akron. And we have a tremendous opportunity to go after federal infrastructure money and money that will come forward. Over the last few years, we've reduced maybe half of the number of lead water mains that are left in the city. We have to find the money to reduce the rest of them. That half is paid for using ARPA, and I think it was a good use of the money. When it comes to contamination, I think our water quality is fairly good, but I think the point that Keith made is important. Communication is very key. After East Palestine, people really wanted more information about what was going on. One thing that I'd like to look at on council over the next few months is getting more information about what is passing through our railways, particularly the parts I represent. That's something that I want to find more information about and share with others.
Mr. Greer.
Thank you. So we have to make sure, of course, with our lead pipes, we have to prioritize that above anything else. And we know also, in particular, these lead pipes tend to be most concentrated in our minority community. So that is going to be a priority number one in my administration. But also, when we look at reducing costs, we have to look at turning the page here in Akron, and that means investing in self-sustaining housing infrastructure. I used to live in Philly, and that was the first time I actually saw up close people utilizing rain barrels. And I had friends of mine who literally had their water costs reduced by 30% over the course of a year. We can do that here in Akron and scale it for every neighborhood. We can save Akronites money by investing in self-sustaining housing infrastructure here at home.
Thank you. And last, representing Ms. Mosley is Mr. Brower.
It's Blower, actually. Thank you, no.
Sorry.
So you've heard a lot of ideas up here. What I want to say first is that all of these issues, what we're really talking about is allocating resources. Because, look, what's the answer to getting rid of our lead pipes? What's the answer to making sure that our water's clean? What's the answer to making sure that we don't have this, that we mitigate risk against spills? The same answer is the same to all of them. Allocate the resources to do it. And the fact of the matter is that we do have so many resources available to do it, so long as our budgeting process happens in an accountable way. And Tara Mosley is on the forefront of making sure that our budgeting happens in a responsible way, and resources are allocated in a way that are accountable to everybody in this room. The other thing I'll say, though, too, about spills is that it's not just the future spills we have to worry about in Akron. There are I didn't see it. Sorry.
We have a third question, and this will start with Mr. Wilson. We've heard it said across Akron that trust is at an all-time low between citizens and the city. And Akron citizens consistently ask for a voice, but the bulk of the work influencing our city is done by a handful of mayoral appointments. Public comment at city council actually comes after votes are done. How do you propose to increase citizen engagement in governmental decision-making? And will you create participative community planning? Or how will you create that?
That's a great question, and that is absolutely the case. There is a mistrust across the city in terms of how the residents see and envision their government taking place across Akron. And I'm hearing that knocking on doors. Neighborhoods are saying, we've been forgotten out here. One of the things that I will do immediately for community participation is we have 10 wards. I think each one of those wards should have their own financial resources to be able to do the things in their wards that they feel are important. I would create endowments for each of those wards with the Akron Community Foundation so that there's a pool of resources. The earnings from those endowments will go to whatever those residents feel are important in their community. So they have direct participation in their government. I would make sure that I work with the city council, not have an animosity type of an arrangement with them, but I would work with them because those ladies and gentlemen are elected to represent their wards. My job is to help them do their job.
Thank you very much. I do have a hook over here, so Mr. Mills on the same question. Trust.
So I would expand upon what Jeff said, allocating resources for our wards and for our council people to have resources to give out to their community, to have a budget. It's been asked for a very long time, and I think it's only right. I bring this up almost every time that we have one of these things, but all the cards that you get, my phone number's on that. It goes right to my pocket. There's no staff member, and there's no person hiding, you'll never see me again if I get elected. We can't do that anymore. It's not feasible. If you're gonna elect a mayor who's gonna make a whole bunch of money and have a whole bunch of access to resources, you need to hold that person accountable. There has to be open communication. You're supposed to be able to call somebody and get an answer. Nothing like, we'll get back to you later. Or I'll go to 301, put a request in, maybe we'll answer you. So we're gonna fix those things. And we're gonna start building trust from the ground up, okay? There's no reason to live in a community where your leaders, your elected officials,
Thank you.
are disappearing.
Mr. Mellon.
There's no bigger issue that would cause me to run for mayor than this. For 3 years on city council, time after time after time, I've seen us get residents' input last. We have to build processes that will get that input at the forefront, right? For every substantial development, there has to be that meeting at St. Sebastian with 200 people at the beginning before you solicit ideas. And I will do that as mayor, but I will also make sure we put it in the charter so every mayor after that will do it as well. This is a question of basic values. I am running for mayor to make the city government more open, more responsive, and more collaborative. It's been really tough. Time after time, watching this, I think I've spoken to more than half of the people in the audience about either White Pond or Tice Woods or Riverwoods. We have to have a city government that's not top down, that listens to its citizens. It is very simple.
Mr. Greer, the same question on trust and allowing citizen engagement.
So you can't have trust without accountability. And the issue is that we've had a government and a city council that has shut down the voices of our citizens, and that is unacceptable. Look, when Jalen Walker was killed, city council shut down public meetings. People wanted to have their voices heard. When I was watching the last city council meeting of last year, where people showed up to talk about their displeasure with the plan at White Pond, and the room was cleared. That should never happen. Because our elected officials and government leaders have to be accountable to the people whom they are sworn to serve, or we don't have any foundation for trust. In my administration, we're going to make sure that our foundation for trust starts with our accountability to the people.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Blower on behalf of Tara Mosley.
All right, so there's just a few things I'm going to say in response to this because it's a big question. I echo a lot of what's already been said. There's three things I want to say, I think. First is this is maybe the third contested mayoral election we've had in Akron in like 40 years. That's not a good way to have accountability. And we're having that election in May 2nd. This is not enough time for all of you guys. All have election fatigue. We just got over November. One of the first things Tara's going to do is work to move the primary farther into August to make sure that you all have time to make these decisions. That's part of accountability. The other thing is my favorite story about Tara. The reason you can live stream city council meetings is because of Tara. She introduced the resolution allowing that sort of transparency so you can watch your city official doing it. And the way she got it passed was just by bringing her iPad to city council meetings and just Facebook live streaming it. And once they figured out that it was going to be Facebook live streamed anyway, they said, okay, might as well just do it in such a way that we look good on camera.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schaefer.
Well, when it comes to openness and honesty, I just want to get this off my chest that Mark Greer has voted 6 times as a Republican according to the Board of Elections. So let's be open and honest about that. I said about the public comment period, when they first started the restrictions, I said that I was against the restrictions. They require you to sign up to vote. That's been found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. They limit that what you say must be a council issue. That's discriminating against viewpoints. That's also unconstitutional. Second of all, look, I'm the only one here talking about interacting with the community. The community won't trust us until we get out there. I'm talking about taking the bus, an open office policy, working hourly jobs like at the park or with the trash department. So if you don't trust the politicians, then why would you vote for anyone that's sitting here who's a current politician? Vote for somebody fresh, vote for somebody new, vote for Josh Schaefer on May 2nd.
Thank you, and we do have a minor policy of letting Mr. Greer speak for 30 seconds to rebut.
So, my friend over here, Mr. Schaefer, first of all, I have been honest about that because I've never hit that. And not only have I mentioned that in my announcement for Mayor of Akron, but it was actually on the front page of the paper. Perhaps you've heard of something called the Beacon Journal. So I just wanted to put that out there on the record. But then again, sir, you talked about getting out there in the community. Well, that's where I reside. And you work on Copley Road. But again, I've never seen you 1 minute out in the community. So let's be honest and open about that.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can keep going back and back. Mr. Mills will start our next question. So you see what I'm doing in 1, 2, and then coming around. So, Mr. Mills, transportation electrification is happening right now at every level, from passenger cars to big trucks, and even fire engines. What policies or initiatives can you put in place to help the city of Akron to electrify its fleet and to support residents and businesses who might electrify as well? Well, I don't think residents are going to electrify themselves, although I almost did today. I think they mean the vehicles, electric vehicles.
So I would like to somehow implement a charging station in every ward, and spread those out, of course, so they're more accessible. I would also have, it's on the back burner, we're talking about it back and forth about making it where it is a certain price to charge a vehicle. Also, there's different plugs as well for different, Teslas have a certain plug, and Nissans have a certain one. I want to make it somehow where we can have plugs that are adaptable. So you have a charging port for your phone or for, an old Walkman, which of course I'm taking myself now. But, so I would like to have that available. It's a really cool idea. When I went to DC, I was in a parking garage, and there was just somebody had their Nissan van, they're just charging, no cost, it was free. Why can't we have something like that as well? And I also want to, introduce maybe subsidies for businesses who want to, help support that, so we can make it reality. I hate talking about things and nothing ever gets done.
Excuse me, but I have passed over Mr. Wilhite to talk about the question of Akron Trust and the question of accessibility to council. And my apologies, and thank you to the audience.
I answered that first. I answered.
Oh, okay. So you did have a chance.
You want to give me some more time? I'll take it.
No, I don't. But an audience member thought I had missed you, and I did want to make that point. So, Mr. Mellon.
So I have a lot to fit in a minute, right? In maybe 2010, the city embarked on this green print program, right? And it was an initiative, an action plan for the environment. For a few years, we followed it, and then like a lot of things, we moved on to the next thing. We've let it go. For the past 3 years, I've pushed for the city to restart creating a climate action plan for our city. Part of that is electrification, right? I've pushed for us to join Power a Clean Future Ohio, which is a statewide coalition, including Clean Fuels Ohio and Ohio Environmental Council and others. And they will help add capacity, because so often the issues we don't have capacity at the city level to have someone focused on this full time. So we are the only major city in the state that hasn't joined. right? And there's a resolution in front of council right now, and the administration is fighting against it as they fought against it when I pushed it last year. So I have committed that we'll have a person at the city level, at the cabinet level, focused on an environmental action plan full-time, and we will join PARC in future Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Mr. Greer.
So I am in support as well in joining, and I appreciate that that is before council right now, but beyond that, I don't want to just have one position at the cabinet level. My administration is committed to creating a sustainability department, because I know as someone who used to work at the city, an issue this big and this consequential, one person cannot do it all themselves. So we will have a sustainability department in the city of Akron. But then beyond this, I think it's important, one of my main concerns when we talk about electrification and our green infrastructure and future here in Akron, we have to make sure that we leave no neighborhood behind. Many people can't afford an EV, right? But we have to make sure that, especially those in our most marginalized communities, our minority communities, that everyone has equal access to affordable green infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Blower.
Thank you. Thank you. So a few points on the electrification of vehicles. The first one is that Tara has a record on this already. She's in the process of she's working with FleetFast, a local company, to locate land in the city of Akron to build an electric vehicle facility. Also, the resolution that they were talking about for us to join, I have to always look at it because the acronym's weird to me. Power a Clean Future Ohio. Tara supports that as well. In fact, she's the one that recently introduced the resolution for Akron to join that program. Finally, like others on the stage, Tara is also going to have a position in her cabinet for an environmental justice director. And I think that, what we're talking about here is building out the infrastructure inside of the city to make sure that we have an administration, that we have a mayor who is responsible for environmental issues. I have to go fast here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schaefer.
So let's talk about where electric vehicles plays into my green energy jobs economy, because up until a week ago or so, when my ideas about green jobs were stolen, I've been the only one out there talking about having a green jobs economy. I'm the only one talking about having solar panels and wind turbines and working with the University of Akron to have job training and to have college degrees in green energy. So I would like to see the gas vehicles phased out as they get replaced, as viable. I understand that, gas is going to get more mileage. It might not work on some police cars, but I would like to see as many vehicles as viable become electric and charge on our new solar-powered municipal power plant, which is going to save everybody money on energy, because it's going to be like Cleveland Public Power, except 100% sustainable energy for all of Akron. Thank you.
Mr. Wilhite.
Thank you. I think that we need to take advantage of any and all federal and state capital dollars that can help us build out stations across the community. But to Mark's point, he's absolutely right. Not everybody can afford a $45,000 electric vehicle. Not everybody can afford a multiple $1,000 power station to put in their garage or onto their home. So we have to look at how we roll an energy policy out using all possible resources on an equity basis for all portions of the community. For those who can afford the EVs and have the opportunity to do that's one area that we'll support. But for those who can't, how do we assist in making sure that they can also be green and environmentally correct based on the resources that we can make sure they have in their community? It has to be an equity equation across the board, or we're not going to move that environmental needle.
Thank you. The next question is question 5, and we start with Mr. Malik. While some view environmental and social justice as opposing ends, so many Studies show the correlation between poor environmental conditions in neighborhoods and elevated violence and higher health disparities. How will you support the integration of essential environmental protective measures like drinking water source protection, tree canopy, into Akron's neighborhoods equitably? And how will neighbors be involved in the process?
Absolutely. Now, in the discussion we're having in council about Power Clean Future Ohio, the administration actually said we can't join this group because equity, they're not prioritize equity. It's crazy, and you're treating these issues like they're contradictory because they are part and parcel. I mentioned Treeside Drive, which is in my neighborhood, right? They have no trees, and yet there is a lot of violence, and we know that heat adds to violence, and we see that when we look at our tree canopy across the city, predominantly we have much less tree canopy in our Black neighborhoods. Now, why is this important? Because a couple of years ago, the city did what the city does well, which is pay someone to create a really great plan about our tree canopy. There are 3 options for how we can preserve our declining tree canopy. There are different goals and different investments. We have not selected one of those options, and so we remain on the same status quo. That is not how we are going to do business. We are going to take the plans, all of the plans that we have, and we are going to start implementing action steps around them.
So environmental justice and social justice are inextricably tied. And we have no greater example than what happened here in Akron with urban renewal and the Inner Belt. And I did a film about this called Beyond the Inner Belt, because we saw what happened when we had predominantly Black neighborhoods in West Hill, Oak Park, Opportunity Parkway, Grand Washington, Lane Worcester. Look, these neighborhoods were raised. We talk about environmental and social justice. We have the opportunity to do something really impactful here by addressing those who were directly impacted. And look, you all probably saw in the news recently about those who worked in our rubber industry, who are now, there's an opportunity for a class action lawsuit. My dad was on that list. When I grew up as a kid, I didn't realize that he was always coughing and hacking. I thought it was just allergies. No, it was because he worked in those plants and he died before his time because of that. We have to make this right here in Akron.
This is a wonderful conversation, and I'm happy we're having it. And I want to just sort of piggyback on some of the points that my colleagues over here made. Well, not my colleagues, Tara's colleagues. Okay, all right. This is the most important point for a lot of people in the room. Segregated cities are sicker, not just for minority communities. The segregated cities are sicker for everybody. There's a book that came out called The Sum of Us that was talking about the ways that basically discriminatory policies were, introduced as ways to avoid providing public services to minority communities. And one of the studies they discussed there is that those kinds of policies make us all sicker because we can't just sort of quarantine our trash disposal areas. We can't quarantine those. They will make some areas disproportionately sicker, but they make us all sicker. So these aren't 2 separate issues.
Mr. Schaefer.
Well, let's talk a little bit about environmental justice. Look, I agree with my colleague Mark that these lead pipes are disproportionately in Black neighborhoods and they must be repaired right away. I've been the only person who's actually mentioned the lead pipes at every single forum and debate up until now because it's been that important to me that I had to mention it even before the environmental debate. Now, we all know that these neighborhoods, the Black neighborhoods, are disproportionately affected by air and water quality. So let's talk a little bit about White Pond, which is right down the street from Cockley Road. Marco Somerville supports deforesting White Pond. He supports building luxury houses. He supports giving 15 years of free taxes to the rich. That's not how we lift up communities. We lift up communities by planting trees, by protecting our wetlands, and by giving tax breaks to the poor and the middle class, not to the rich on the environmental issues.
Marco's not here, but
oh, yeah.
Mr. Wilhite.
I'm not gonna worry about it for Marco.
I'm sure he'll be able to do it.
Social justice and environmental justice, as everyone has said, absolutely are linked. There's no difference. And the way to make sure that both are met in a very direct and forthright way is to make sure that there's equity across the board. All areas of the city deserve to have their voices heard. They deserve to have what they would like to see done in their community, and they need a city that will bring in any and all possible resources to level the playing field across the board. And that's everything from clean drinking water to air quality, soil preservation and protection. All of those things have to be important. But one of the most important things is a green card approach, as we saw earlier, where we begin by building that trust, by showing every community that we do plantings within those communities that bring back that green canopy that we all need in our lives.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
Repeat the question.
Why, sure. While some view environmental and social justice as opposing ends, many studies show the correlation between poor environmental conditions in neighborhoods and elevated violence and higher health disparities. How will you support the integration of essential environmental protective measures, drinking water source protection and tree canopy, perchance, into Akron's neighborhoods equitably, especially those neighborhoods most health vulnerable and economically underserved? And how can neighbors be involved?
So, when we're going through this, what really stands out in my mind is that if you're not happy where you live, you're not going to be happy in your life. So, when you go outside, I want you to see beautiful trees, flowers. I want to put more resources at making, great streets, better streets, and that, obviously, make Akron beautiful, and actually have the resource there beyond just one or two people. Neighbors can get involved, citizens can get involved with these organizations. I'll make them more open, more fair, and equitable for them to join. And also, there's some ideas that, when you join these organizations, you plant a tree, you can get something reimbursed from the city. Maybe we can work together, partner to make it financially advantageous for citizens to take the lead, plant trees and plant flowers and that kind of thing. I think that, having the citizens period at the table for us to figure out back and forth what ways would encourage them to do that is beneficial.
Thank you. Our plan here is to continue with questions that have been developed by the groups which sponsored this. They've been looking at your questions as well, and we will address some of them. And I would ask the candidates to stay a few minutes in case we don't get to them. Many of your questions are exactly what I'm reading here, according to the screeners on there. Plus, I want to give everybody a chance up here to lead a question. So the next person to lead the question is Mr. Greer. The city has the Office of Integrated Development and other departments that aim to integrate multiple efforts across the city. But if there is no sustainability department nor a cabinet position, but there is no sustainability department nor a cabinet position. As mayor, could you support a sustainability cabinet level position, or how would you implement many of these great ideas?
So I mentioned this earlier in my answer that my administration will support not just a cabinet level position, but a sustainability department. Because again, I worked in the Office of Integrated Development. I did the Great Streets Initiative myself, 13 neighborhood business corridors. I can tell you, it is not a pretty picture when you have no help. I was the small business program manager. I actually did that job and the Great Streets job for about 6 months myself. So again, I think that we have to really overhaul how we are governing and functioning as a city, because we have to move at the speed of where our community lives. We can't move at our own pace any longer. And so having a sustainability department is essential, because we need multiple people working on this most consequential issue that is essential to every Akronite.
Thank you, Mr. Blower, on behalf of Tara Mosley.
Yeah, Tara's platform calls specifically for an environmental justice cabinet department, and we will put that person in place. Whenever it comes to doing a broader department, I know Tara has discussed that, will consider that as well. She's not committed to it yet, so I'm not permitted to just commit to it right now. But it is something that we have discussed and something that she's looking at. And so I do want to say sort of that broader point, though, that's in the question, that you don't get to integrate people into a decision-making process unless they have a seat at the table. And that is definitely one of the themes of Tara's campaign as well. It's putting people first and making sure that you have people at the table, and to have the people invited to the table accept that invitation, you also have to have credibility with them. And that is one of the issues that I think sets Tara apart. She's lived here a long time, and she has the credibility that whenever she says she's going to listen to you, people will believe her.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, so I believe that Akron should participate in the Tree City program. I would love to see Akron be a tree city, and as part of that, you are required to have such an agency. I would like to see an Akron Environmental Protection Agency, and I'd like Shamus to be the director. That's all.
Absolutely, we have to have a sustainability program. I would be leery to call it a sustainability department, because as we've said, trust has to be the key component of that going forward. So anytime you say department, the walls automatically go up. There's a barrier. I would propose an environmental sustainability co-op, where it is not only the folks at the city who help move the legislation and the components that need to be done through the government side of the equation, but you, ladies and gentlemen, who have the heart, who have the understanding, who have the will and desire to affect change, that's your seat at the table. But more importantly, your seat has some strength to it. There's some real momentum behind it. So I would create a co-op style accountability and accessibility program, where we make sure collectively and together that we're getting to the final goal.
Thank you. Mr. Bills on sustainability.
So it be it a department or a co-op, when words just come out, right? And my brain is turning like, hey, how can we actually make this a reality? The days of people talking about sustainability, getting hired at the mayor's office, making $140,000, you know who they are, those days are over with, if I get elected. We're going to be reallocating those sources to actually staff departments, to staff co-ops, to make sure that people can actually help, when Mark had that job, actually help them. And they're going to be, geared towards Akronites, starting at $15 to $20 an hour. They can come work for the city, okay, which is a great opportunity. So we can actually put money back into our citizens so they can actually have a job, okay? So that, that will include taking a haircut at the mayor's office. So we can sustain this program and not have one or two people trying to do a whole thing. It's just like when being a teacher, we were short-staffed, the city is short-staffed. We're gonna make this fair, equitable, and open to everyone.
Mr. Malik, to talk about your future job. I'm joking, of course.
Sure.
Mr. Malik on sustainability.
So as a mayor, I've already said that I would have a cabinet level sustainability person, and Mark is absolutely right. I said one person at the cabinet level, but they will need to have people under them because we have to implement things. And the key will be to have an environmental action plan for each city department, right? So there are concrete ways in which each city department is moving towards these goals. And there's just a basic thing to talk about here. So we have 1,800 people who work at the city of Akron. The capacity, the human capacity is why we struggle to implement things. When we are spending all of our staff time chasing developments on the outskirts of the city, we don't have time to invest in Grace Streets or the small business program, right? We don't have time to invest in the environmental action plan. That is why we have very clear priorities in our Together for Akron vision on our website around safety, jobs, education, and health, housing, and the environment. There are 4 plans. You can read them. They'll be the priorities in year 1, and year 4, and beyond.
I see some of our helpers with glasses of water, which I think they intend for you. Who would like one? Are you getting drunk? There's no vodka in them.
Never mind.
Never mind. Thanks for the help. I know how these things run. After an hour, you're thinking, oh my goodness. We have one roundtable question left, and that will start out with Mr. Blower as he takes a drink. Protecting and growing the tree canopy may seem silly and irrelevant, and not as important perhaps as public safety or gun violence, until you realize the long-term health, environmental, and economic impacts that fewer trees have on the residents of certain neighborhoods that are losing them. According to the city, Akron's tree canopy annually returns $4 million. The tree canopy also positively impacts emissions, water, energy, air quality, and property value for the city. Since 2016, when the plan was done in accordance with the consent decree, the canopy has actually declined 2% to 35% total of the total urban landscape. As a reference, 40% cover for urban tree canopy is recognized as a good target. How will you support the city's tree plan for Ms. Mosley?
On behalf of Tara, I think that I want to address the premise of the question first, the first part of the question, that it's somehow silly to address trees whenever we're dealing with other issues. I can speak on behalf of her that is not silly. These issues are interrelated, and whenever you do things like provide a tree canopy, and whenever you provide an important environment to, you provide improvements to people's environments, what you are doing is you are addressing, not wholly, not completely, but at least partially, you are addressing all of the other issues that are we're facing as a city. So the first thing I'll say is that, yeah, planting more trees is important, not just because it's important to have more trees for the environmental issues you said, but they infuse everything. And Tara will, she's not only committed to increasing our canopy, but she's also committed to increasing our park space and making it so that we have other green areas where people can gather.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Well, it's important to pick out who is genuine here on this issue. Look, when I moved to Akron 5 years ago, I made it a plan of my own to plant fruit trees in my yard and to feed the homeless with the fruit every year, and I continue to do that. The tree canopy has always been an important issue to me, and healthy fruits and vegetables and food has always been an issue that's been important to me. Look, I've been running for mayor for 2 years, and this whole time, I've been talking about the environment. I've been talking about reforestation. I've been talking about land acquisition. And so if the tree canopy is important to you and you want to see more trees, first of all, we need to stop the deforestation at White Pond immediately. We need to reforest other lands that are currently abandoned, and we need to acquire more lands for more green space. A vote for me will be a breath of fresh air. Mess that one up. Yeah, fresh air.
Well, I think if you've committed to expanding the tree canopy, you don't do it by removing White Pond and the trees that are at White Pond and devastating a piece of property that's valued at $7 million and selling it for $750,000. That is not how you advance the tree canopy. And until and unless, again, we have a comprehensive land use policy in this city, I don't see our tree canopy numbers going forward. I only see them going backwards. Leave the green space alone, reevaluate the existing properties that have already been developed. How do we reuse those? Because all the utilities and infrastructure is already there. That's a way to increase the issue of providing affordable housing, to addressing abandoned properties, to lowering crime because those don't become dump sites, those vacant properties. But you cannot stand up here and say you're an environmentalist if you sell a piece of property valued at $7 million for $750,000 and say, oops, I made a mistake, we gotta do better.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
So I'm gonna echo what some of my colleagues here have said in a completed agreement. Speaking of the vacant land, the city is going to acquire that property, and then we're not just gonna forget about it. We're going to move forward to implement actually planting trees on this property, on these properties that we acquire. Also encouraging citizens who, if you live in Akron and a house or something gets torn down or has a fire, God forbid, you are able to purchase that property. There's measure in place. If they do that, then we'll try and make it beneficial for that person to plant trees on that property instead of just leaving it vacant and overgrown or not grown. We have to go out there and mow it as a city and whatnot. But having trees is very important. And I want to kind of pick on Josh here for a second, but I've been running for mayor since I was about 9 years old. Okay, so I'm serious. As a little kid, I'm like, why are these things getting torn down and nothing's happening? My entire life, like torn down, forgotten about. I used to work for Akron Public Schools. When custodians are like, let's rip out the trees, the heck with the trees, because they don't want to maintain them, right? I would take them back to my property and plant them and try and save them. Okay, because are you serious? Like, why would we be okay with this?
Mr. Mallon.
Thank you. Well, you have already heard my ideas about the tree canopy, but when I started on council, I learned that there is one person in the city who's responsible for all of the street trees in the city of Akron. That person, after maybe a year, took a job as the superintendent of parks maintenance. That person is still responsible for all of the street trees in the city. There's a reason why we are not getting things done on this, because we are not devoting enough staff capacity and priority and sense of urgency to these issues, right? We will absolutely change that. We need to make a final decision on what our goal will be. Will it be 40%? Will it be 45%? Will it be 38%? When it comes to White Pond, that was the biggest issue that I saw when I first learned of the plans last May. I went to the city and I said, when we plant things for the Akron Waterways Renewed, we plant 2 trees for every 1 removed. I asked them to back me up in asking for the same commitment, or at least 1-to-1 from the developer. They refuse. When council leadership does that, when the administration does that, it's not a priority. They ended up donating $15,000.
Mr. Greer.
Well, I know firsthand that employee that Sean has mentioned, because I and him were in the same department of 3 employees, by the way, called development engineering. And then when he got that new job, we had 2 employees. And then when I got promoted, we had 1 employee. So I think that when we talk about, though, increasing the tree canopy, we can do it really impactfully by focusing at the neighborhood level. During my time as Great Streets Administrator, we planted over 350 trees around our Great Streets corridors. We planted a new park in a city-owned vacant lot at the corner of Copley Road and Ritchie Avenue, where we also planted apple trees in the back there. But again, when we talk about the effect on, for example, the housing value, look, we know where our marginalized neighborhoods are. We can focus by planting new trees in these areas and help our marginalized communities build more equity and wealth.
Thank you. And now we're going to start another round. The 15-year, this is Mr. Schaefer to start. The 15-year tax abatement is a signature policy of Dan Horgan's administration. While it was intended to catalyze land development in Akron, it has unfortunately benefited out-of-state landlords who do not maintain their properties, wealthy property owners in affluent areas, and developers who bulldoze what little precious green space we have left. We have therefore on our hands a proliferation of unaffordable housing, an eviction crisis, and overburdened shelters for the unhoused. How will you reform or end the tax abatement? And secondly, how will you address the housing crisis that persists in spite of a 15-year abatement for renters, the unhoused, underserved, and marginalized populations? So how do you reform or end the tax abatement?
So first of all, it's not just a policy of the Horgan administration. It's a current policy of Marco, and that's why he's not here tonight. So I'd like to make that clear. Look, I am not at all for the 15 years of tax abatement for the rich. I think that's trickle-down economics. I think that money would be better served and would go further if we gave tax abatements to lower income people to move into Akron. And I think that we should be building affordable housing, not luxury housing. Right now, I don't think that there is a demand for luxury housing. I think we have plenty of luxury housing. We have mansions. They're very economically diverse. So I would like to see affordable housing built, and I'd like to see it built in places that are already cleared, or perhaps parking lots. Like at Chapel Hill Mall, there was discussion of building some affordable housing. That hasn't come to fruition yet, but we don't need to deforest our land in order to build affordable housing. Thank you.
Mr. Wilhite.
I think the 15-year tax abatement has backfired. While the concept sounded good, I'll give you a quick story. Cindy and I have been blessed to live in a nice neighborhood. We've worked hard all our lives and we have a nice home, as do my neighbors. There is a neighbor in my neighborhood that sold their home to get away from paying property taxes for 15 years and bought a lot over in the Perkins Woods area where they're getting the 15-year tax abatement. If the initial plan was to grow the population, that didn't happen. All we did was shift a person from one address to the other. I think if we're ever going to get to a point of fair and equitable and affordable housing, we need to give folks in all areas of the community. If you're willing to stay there, if you're willing to live there, there should be tax abatements all across the city. And not just for building new homes, but encourage people to restore existing homes and create tax abatements that will allow that to happen so that we save a lot of the houses that we have in our community.
Mr. Bills.
Well, the tax abatement will get modified. It has backfired. When you go through, you're just changing people around, right? I get texts all the time from people from, other landlords and stuff. They're like, you can pick this house up for 23 grand in Akron. Those are the kind of houses that the city we're going to buy, and we're going to sell back to citizens. And if we have to, we'll be the lender as well. Preferably, I'm sorry. So preferably, we would have them, purchase these houses from us, first-time home buyers, okay? Houses that are $50,000, 60, 23. These are houses that are realistic. They are out there, and we're going to fix them up with our youth and get them, learning the trade as well, okay? You don't need this 15-year tax abatement, which ends up, having a development on diagonal with a $219,000 house on a 321 with a refi, with a 30-year mortgage, and the more loopholes or not, the more things that they have, the more you're set for failure.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
So if you go down Akron Peninsula, on one side of the road, there's Sycamore development, so there's no 15-year tax abatement. There's Riverwoods development, and that's in Trunca Falls. There's Riverwoods development that's in Akron, has 15-year tax abatement. Okay? The housing market is working fine. We're leaving money on the table, right? I've pushed 2 different deputy mayors for integrated development to reform our tax abatement program. They have refused to do so, so I'm going to do it myself. We have committed on our working together plan on our website to do that. In Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, they are all reforming their tax abatement program, so it's a sliding scale. In neighborhoods where the housing market isn't working, we will still use it, but in the outskirts, it's not needed. Finally, I've worked very hard to fight our eviction crisis, particularly with our Right to Counsel program. But the way we're going to fix this is by focusing on infill housing in our neighborhood, using our community development corporations and private developer partners, and really incentivize folks to build in the neighborhoods where we as a city own over 1,000 vacant lots.
Mr. Greer.
So as mayor, our tax abatement policy is going to be totally reformed, because the issue, as we know, it did not focus on helping the neighborhoods that so many of them here in Akron resemble broken combs without many teeth. I started my campaign, and on our website, you'll see that we focus on infill housing. This is the key in order to really transform our neighborhoods. Because before you can ever revitalize a neighborhood, we have to stabilize them first. And we have too many neighborhoods that are riddled with vacant lots that robs the neighboring families and homes of their wealth. But look, we have to really focus on what I've been talking about at every forum. We have to have real zoning reform if we ever want to see real affordable housing in Akron. We can't continue with a single-family zoning landscape. We have to have multi-use zoning, and so we can actually have different housing options that everyone can afford.
So I'm not gonna disagree or with a lot of what we heard about that on the stage already. The tax abatement was an experiment that failed, backfired. We need to change it so that it is a sliding scale. The other thing is we absolutely do need to change our zoning to be able to make it so that it's easier to have affordable housing in this city. So that's where I agree with them. Where I want to supplement that though is that I want to say is that whenever we go to those communities, you gave me a heart attack. Whenever we go to those communities and say, we need to change our zoning, the fact of the matter is that you need somebody with credibility in the neighborhood. That is Tara Mosley. Tara Mosley has spent her entire life in this community. Whenever it's time to go to East Akron, whenever it's time to go to places like Summit Lake, and those other neighborhoods, they're going to trust Tara Mosley because she's lived there her entire life. She's dealing with the same issues that all of them are living with. And whenever she says that it's time to change, they'll believe her.
The next question. Would you answer this one?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Wilhite, let's start off the next question. According to a recent Gallup poll, 90% of workers today do not want to return to their physical office. Recidivism is an issue across all sectors, public and private. Showing commitment to sustainability, environmental, and good governance that centers DEI has proven return on investment in attracting young knowledge workers. What is your workforce development strategy for the city to incorporate workers in smart, data-driven green jobs, particularly those who have been excluded, marginalized, or even ostracized from that work in the past?
Well, I think you hit it in the overview. It's quality of life. If you have a solid quality of life here in the community, you're going to attract those folks to come here and want to be here and live here and participate here in our community. And we've got the tools that we need to do that. We have an extraordinary park system, national, countywide, and city. Those are opportunities for folks to do things that they love to do outdoors. We have an incredible arts and cultural community here. Also going to the quality of life initiative. We have a arts and culture plan that is very much going to be a part of my economic development initiative, because when you can create those kinds of environments that young people want to participate in be in and can grow in, that's how you're going to turn that whole workforce initiative around, is to make sure that we tell our story. We don't do that well enough now, and to the degree that we can do that better, that will only serve us in the future.
So I think that exactly right. It's quality of life issues. Since from the beginning that I started this endeavor, I brought forth the idea that we could operate, fund, run, like our water department, a internet service provider, ISP. Okay, this harkens back to on Friday I was in the office at my school, and there's a student there. He cannot do the online work because he has no internet at home. Okay, he's behind in credits. So he's like basically begging my principal for a hotspot that's funded by, by my school district. Okay, it's just simple things of that nature that we can fix. Okay, not everyone can afford internet the way it is, and it's always if you can catch a deal. Okay, that's the small things that we can move towards fixing to improve that quality of life and to get people to be able to work from home, work, out in public, that kind of thing. So that's what I will focus on in my administration.
Malik?
Sure. So it's worth just pointing out that, the days of just trying to have big companies with lots of employees downtown, are behind us, but they also didn't include a lot of people in the first place. Okay? And so our website, we have our working together plan, which is our jobs plan. One of the basic things, and Keith hit on it a little bit, is just removing basic barriers that keep people from working, right? Affordable internet is one thing. Affordable childcare is the thing I hear most about when I go and talk to folks, right? Another big thing is workforce development, and I talked a lot about our community learning centers. We all paid for these. We're still paying the debt. based on the promise that they would be schools by day and community centers on evenings and weekends. Now, they can be amazing places where our children are connected with extracurriculars on evenings and weekends, but they also are proximate in their neighborhoods to all of us, right? We can all walk down to King right now, we can all walk over to Portage Path right now. There could be workforce skills training programs in our community centers right now.
Mr. Greer.
So I think we have to look at ourselves honestly and say that we have to start treating our people better here if we ever hope to not only increase our population, but stem the tide in the continued decline we've seen decade after decade. Look, if we're not treating people fairly, equitably, and if we are not an inclusive environment, we have polling that told us that 20% of our population are seriously considered leaving Akron. We have 20,000 students at the University of Akron, and our retention rate of graduates is woefully low. When our children graduate from high school and they think that they have to leave Akron to find their way in life or find a better opportunity, then we have lost the battle. We have to make sure that we are going after our workforce issues at the core and realizing that the Akron that we develop is the Akron that will attract the people who we need here.
Mr. Blower?
Yeah, thank you. So there's a lot packed into that question.
There is, in 2 minutes.
Yeah. So there's a lot packed into that question. I'm not going to reach it all. Instead, I'm going to sort of jump up and thematically jump off of some of what you've heard on the stage already. This city was built as a commuter city in a lot of ways. In the past 40 years, we've seen people disinvest in the city and build it as a place for people who don't live here. Tara has lived here her entire life, and what she's going to be dedicated to is making sure that this is a city that's built for the people that live here too, at least for them too. And that is going to address a lot of these issues, the workforce issues, because the fact of the matter is that people are going to be working from home. If you want to be a city with workers, you need to be a place where people want to live. And we can do that because we have an infrastructure that is right for building new homes and new places for people to live. We've heard a lot of people talking about infill housing. Bringing housing back into the city is what Tara will do.
Thank you.
So I'd like to work with my Deputy Mayor Mosley to help establish my new green jobs economy. Because our green jobs economy will list. Why did you? Probably in the law department. We should work with the University of Akron for green jobs training and for degree programs. My green jobs economy will improve air and water quality and repair our city's lead pipes. This strong economy will bring new residents. It'll bring more money. It will save the planet. It will save the city and people money on their electric bills because we're going to have a municipal power plant. And, look, in the end, it's going to be way better than going and deforesting land in order to give people tax breaks for the rich. And as far as getting people to stay here, I have a plan that gives tax breaks to people who graduate from high school or college who want to stay and work or live in Akron. They would get 5 years of tax abatement instead of 15 years of tax abatement for the rich. So that's how I would bring green jobs and establish a thriving green energy economy like we've never seen before, ever.
Mr. Wilhite.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Happy to. According to a recent Gallup poll, 90% of workers today do not want to return to their office. Recidivism is an issue across all sectors, public and private. Showing commitment to sustainability.
I answered that.
Yeah, we started with that.
Then, okay, somebody here is getting really tired.
I think we're on a new one for Keith.
New one for Keith. This is what it says right here too. Barb wrote it. In order to retain current and attract new residents to live in Akron, we must improve sustainability and quality of life in our buildings and neighborhoods. Nationally, most affordable housing funders require increasing levels of redesigns and retrofits in order to successfully compete for funding, resulting in 75% of all affordable housing today being built to green standards such as LEED and green enterprise communities. Related, 100-year storms are happening every 1 to 3 months, or right outside our door today. Our aging housing stock is therefore particularly vulnerable to issues from severe flooding and things like black mold. What will be your administration's strategy to take advantage of this unique moment to ensure that Akron's neighborhoods, including municipal buildings, residential homes, and privately owned buildings, become equitable, sustainable, healthy, and safe?
So look, we do not need more expensive housing in Akron, okay? That is not affordable for the populace, the majority of them. Okay, so I would like to focus on that and making actual housing affordable for people, as I mentioned before, $50,000, $60,000 houses. In order to make, it all comes back to communication. In order to make people come to these standards, we need to offer, obviously, communication, transparency. We also need to offer services. So if some people cannot afford to do some of the things to their homes, they should be able to know that they can reach out to the mayor's office of the city and that we have their back. And if they need to apply for a grant or get someone like a business plan or, in order to access funds, maybe even a simple proposal for a bank to give them, a loan. We need to know that the city has your back so that we can help you write those so they're acceptable and they'll be accepted by the bank or the other lender. Okay, so if somebody cannot afford to fix their home, we should be able to do it for them.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon.
Thank you. So, over the last few years, continuously when developments come before council, I ask, well, are there any green building standards on this? I say no, because the city doesn't have any overall green building standards. This is a really key thing that I want us to focus on with our environmental action plan. Okay? There should be a baseline, and not just for green building standards, but also for affordable housing set aside for every new development that we as a city help fund. Now, we also have a huge responsibility when it comes to helping people maintain the housing that they're living in. We have a lot of neighborhoods that have stable, good housing. People are having a hard time keeping it up. I actually think the small home repair program through ARPA was a positive step in this direction. We have to cut through the red tape and make sure that people have an easier way of using this. And also, we have to recognize there are a lot of sources of funding right now that are out there, particularly with the Development Finance Authority and others for retrofits that we're not adequately connecting people with, and we're not communicating about enough. And so if that's part of our green building standards, that's something that we will require from the start.
So when we talk about green building standards, I think we have to start with, at the city, is that we got to stop knocking down all of our historic buildings and infrastructure here in Akron and actually preserve them, because the data shows us that the most green building is the one that's already there. And when I hear talk about tearing down the old Firestone headquarters, this is a building on the National Historic Register where this building could be repurposed. We could have things like urban farming. There are so many opportunities that we have right here in Akron. And look, we don't need any more parking lots. We have enough of those in Akron. But for us to keep tearing down buildings and actually working against actually creating a green and carbon neutral environment, we need to stop doing this. Let's preserve our historic architecture and let's repurpose it for it to work for all of Akron.
All right, so when we're talking about green buildings, I want to talk about investment. What this takes is for us to have a city government that understands that whenever you're building new buildings, this is an investment that is worth it and that makes sense because we are working in a new climate reality. Part of your question mentioned flooding, and just side note, in my job, I've dealt with a lot of litigation with cities in Chicago that are trying to redo all of their sewers because of increased flooding that they're having there. And it's an enormous expense. And the thing of it is that we will be saving ourselves more money by doing this on the front end. And to echo what Mr. Greer said, we do need to use our existing buildings, and I'll expand on that. We are going to have a lot more buildings downtown that are vacated by current businesses. they're going to decide that we don't need this anymore and we should use those buildings too.
You're good at that, Mr. Schaefer.
I'd also like to piggyback off Mark about the historic buildings. I've been talking at the past forums and debates about creating something similar to the Antiquities Act, which is an act whereby the president can declare, anything of historic significance in order to prevent it from being torn down. I think we could do that here with the mayor. Also, look, I'm looking to put funding towards installing solar panels and wind turbines on city properties. Also, I'm looking for a delayed loan program where we can do residential solar, similar to what we do with the lead abatement program, and where you would pay off the loan after you leave the house. And these private solar panels will save money for the homeowners or for the landlords, and will also contribute to our municipal power plant. So all of this is part of my green jobs economy. And again, it's going to be a green jobs economy like nobody's ever seen before. We're going to rival the rubber industry with our new green jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Woolite.
I think one of the first things that I would try and do is clone Tony Trophy, because you're sitting in a building that is exactly an example of preserving, and he deserves that applause, because this building deserves to be saved because of the rich heritage that we're sitting in right now. And to Mark's point, I absolutely save every historical building that we have an opportunity to do. But in my sustainable co-op that I talked about earlier, this is a prime example of how we can collectively pull together resources and work block by block. Folks, being able to help individuals who are trying to stay in their homes, trying to renovate their homes, bring the trades in, teach young people how to be carpenters, how to be plumbers, how to be electricians, help folks get those things done at an affordable rate, so that the job first and foremost gets done. But to use the phrase, it takes a village, and it's going to take a village if we're going to turn this around.
Thank you. I think I covered everyone on that one. And we have one last question from the groups, and then I've got a series of audience questions. Mr. Mosley, or Mr. Mosley. You're next. Who's next? Mr. Mallett.
Somebody over there.
Somebody over there is Mr. Mallett. With climate change, food scarcity is likely to become a more pressing issue even in Akron. How can Akron meet the need? And what are some other ways to ensure food security as we face climate change? How do you remediate past policies that allow the proliferation of businesses like Family Dollar instead of grocery stores and markets and what's called food deserts?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that's most notable to me about the city of Akron, when I moved back home after law school, you can drive down Market Street, and if you keep going to Montrose, you can count like 10 supermarkets, in a couple miles. There are huge portions of our city that don't have access to quality food, affordable food, right? And there are different strategies for each neighborhood, right? But I think partnering with our community development corporations and with our Great Streets businesses to make sure that there are options within each neighborhood is critical. Downtown is important, but each neighborhood really is critical. And this goes back to the inequities, right? Because the whole portion of the west side of Akron that really doesn't have access to quality, affordable food. Farming is something that we're seeing pop up all across our city. But I think when we look at co-op, Jeff is talking about co-ops, but co-ops and other forms, whether it's delivery and pickup, are going to be ways that we can solve this. But again, it's going to be something that we have to make a priority within city government that's not now.
So I just talked about urban farming, which is such a huge opportunity we have here in Akron. Look, we have an abundance of vacant buildings. Let's not tear them down, but let's repurpose them and utilize them to actually address these issues in all of our neighborhoods. Because as we know, it's not just a fact of if there's no grocery store in your neighborhood, but if you can't find fresh and organic produce in a neighborhood near you, then we are still perpetuating food inequities. And we're also perpetuating further social determinants of health. We have to make sure that we're addressing these issues in every neighborhood. And my administration will not only prioritize this, but we will make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Blower.
Yeah, and look, whenever it comes to food deserts, whenever it comes to these kinds of things, we've been dealing with these for a long time. There have been barren areas in the city where you can't get good food, and we're familiar with these issues. The plans to fix them are about bringing people to the table, bringing the right investors to people, and making sure that everybody is on the same page, going in the same direction, to make sure that we have the people there and the stores there, and you kind of have to do everything together. I think that we're not going to see a lot of different plans up here. We're going to all be saying a similar thing. I'll just keep beating the drum that I've been beating throughout this and say, look, okay, yes, who is the person that in the neighborhoods and in the communities that they're going to listen to and have the buy-in that's necessary to bring everybody to the table? It is one thing to invite everybody to the table. It's the other thing to have the credibility with people at the table that they actually show up and feel listened to. And I feel that Tara's done the work that people accept those invitations.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Well, I disagree a little bit that we're all the same, because I've been talking about urban farming for the last couple of years that I've been running for mayor. It's been on my website, and it's refreshing to hear everybody else talk about it now after a few debates that I've been talking about at every single forum and every single debate. And we talked a little bit about climate change in this question, so I think we need to start by addressing climate change. We can do so locally with our new green jobs economy. I'm going to keep going on that. And my idea for food security was also about urban farming. So I just want everybody to know, though, that I've been talking about that at every forum and at every debate. And so I'm glad to hear that everyone else agrees today at this debate.
Mr. Wilhite?
Thank you. Again, to further the co-op concept that I've been talking about, and to hit on a point that Shamus has made, we have community learning centers in every community. The big issue for anyone to bring a food facility to a community is overhead. They work on very small margins. They'll tell you that it's too expensive for them to come to a community. So let's take the expense out of the equation. If we have these facilities, why can't those facilities be local farm market locations where students can take food home, parents can take food home when they pick up their students, people in the immediate area can walk to it if they so chose. But you've got to look at the causality of why folks and the business side aren't doing the development. Let's address the overhead issues, the cost issues, so that we can get to a solution that works for everybody and eliminates the food desert.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
So Jeff, you kind of read my mind there with the overhead. When you're thinking about, okay, well, you know, you have these supermarkets, or you have, you know, Dollar General or Family Dollar. You're operating on very small margins. This is a fact. That's true. So we can't. It's not a sustainable model to always import food and have organic food all the time. You just have to look at it. You know, even Hattie Laurel, they tried to do something, and you know, it wasn't successful, and they had to stop because there was a food desert down off of Copley Road. But anyway, I want to focus on educating our citizens on how to grow their own food in their backyards, and actually taking some of our vacant lots and making them, you know, community farms. When I was living in North Hill, it was so awesome. We had the poly population move in, and they actually they took it upon themselves and they started like just farming. It was so cool. It was so cool. And I was so happy to be a part of that when I was in that neighborhood living there. Before we moved, my dad lives there now, so I get to go back and I get to see the progress. But it makes me very excited for this to be a thing and educate our citizens to grow their own food.
Thank you, Mr. Malik.
I'm
ready. So we'll give another tough question to Mr. Greer next.
Yes.
How can you, or how will you, use city procurement dollars, I'm reading the little ones now, to green the city?
I'm sorry.
How will you use city procurement dollars to green up Akron?
So I think when we look at our procurement at the city over the past several years, I think this is one of the important changes that we have to intentionally realize. We've had one person working in that role, and we have unfortunately not seen the needle move in terms of a diverse landscape and bullpen of contractors that have been hired. we have to be very intentional here, because when we talk about diversity in procurement, well then that has to mean working beyond one company that is getting 85% of those contracts. That's not diversity, that's not equity, and that will not move us forward. So when we talk about greening up our city, well, we have to first make sure that the system in which we hire contractors and that we process contracts is actually open, fair, and equitable.
Thank you, Mr. Blower.
So one of the things that Tara says at every one of these is that if you show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities. And the way that Tara is going to approach the issue of greening the city is that she's going to allocate the resources for it. And whenever it comes to the specific issue of procurement, you're talking about the subcontractors and stuff like that. The way that you get diversification whenever it comes to your contractors in that same way is to get new people into the office. And Tara has committed to make sure that whenever she's mayor, she was going to have a cabinet, and she's going to have a government that looks like Akron. And she's going to be able to do that. And whenever we have that, we're going to have new and different ideas. You know, an idea of a 15-year tax abatement, for example, is the sort of idea that comes from having the same sort of people in government over and over again. Whenever you have somebody like Tara Mosley who comes from the community, who comes from the neighborhoods, she's going to have different people with new ideas.
So I hate to be a broken record here, but the answer is green jobs. I'm going to spend money on my green jobs economy. And we're going to have the best economy Akron's ever had. We're going to have cleaner air. We're going to have cleaner water. We're going to have solar panels and wind turbines. And we're going to do it by hiring small businesses, small Black-owned businesses, small women-owned businesses, small minority-owned businesses, and small LGBT businesses to help our green economy thrive like we've never seen before.
Mr. Wilhite.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about procurement, you have to set a set of standards and some incentives for folks who are performing their service under a green agenda, and the items that we procure, they come from a green background. You need to understand that that's the critical part of moving forward from an environmental perspective. There's a company in Sharon Center, Celicor, and they've come up with an amazing product. They're using the waste of the agave plant. They've got a long-term contract with Jose Cuervo. When they finish with the plant to make their product, the agave plant is used to create a recyclable straw and plasticware that we all get when we go to the quick food places that we go to, and it decomposes 200 times faster than plastic. And it is an amazing thing. They've just established 5 production lines, and they're going to create this product, and they already have orders for everything they can generate. That's how you get to green procurement.
Mr. Rose.
So growing up very poor and always risking every few months worrying about getting evicted as a child and having to, wait a week because before your food stamps were to re-up or, I have a profound respect for money. So when it comes to procurement, every dollar will be micromanaged of where it's going and very intentional to keep it back in our community and our neighborhoods. There's no reason, I don't care how much political clout you have, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get 80% of the budget or whatever to give to them. This is not how you do business, okay? So we're going to be very intentional at even coming down to the city, buying trees, planting flowers, making sure that we have people on staff. A lot of people in Akron don't even make over $30,000 a year, okay? One person down at the mayor's office making 140. We could have, 3-4 people who are helping us make sure that we are green and making sure that we are making a better quality of life for all of us.
Mr. Mallon.
Thank you. We really, as a city, have to do a much better job in how we do contracted. Right? This week, we voted on an almost $800 billion budget for the city. We've seen in the Beacon Journal that over the last 2 years, more than $100 million has been spent in consulting contracts that haven't been reviewed by council, most of which have not been bid publicly. And when you don't bid things publicly, what happens? You end up contracting with the same folks you've always contracted with. And it's not from a place of malice, but it ends up being the same kind of folks. It doesn't end up being minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. Now, Jeff is absolutely right. We should give incentives to businesses that have sustainable practices. But at the end of the day, we can be so much more efficient when we spend our money if we bid more than $100 million in contracts that are not currently being bid. And we can take that savings and we can plow it into Josh's green jobs economy. I'm sorry.
Hey, you'll be in charge of it, so.
I think you started last time, right? I'm trying to combine a couple questions here because we have about 15 minutes left. There's a question, a comment about electrifying cars actually doing nothing to improve the quality of life and still utilizes a lot of resources. The question is, how do you balance that by providing public transportation alternatives? And so I guess the question is, what are your views on cycling, public transportation? I mean, that's like asking, will you stop beating your wife? I mean, but what specifically? I mean, that's always a question that's so vague, but what policies can you enact? What's logical at this point?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. So that is one of the things that we haven't really touched on yet in this discussion. That is this piece of it. It is transportation, and there's basically phases of how you have to go about this. There's the front end, and then the middle, and then the end. Towards the end, it would be lovely to have electronic vehicles that are solar energy and our driverless cars. That's the future we all want. I would love to promise that to you on behalf of Tara. I'm not committed to just yet. In the short term, though, there are more practical things that we can do. We have a public transportation system that's run by some really good people. Tara Mosley has partnerships with those people, and we are going to do things to increase ridership. One of the things we have to do, though, is create a culture of people valuing public transportation, and that means putting it front and center all the time, and that's what Tara will prioritize.
Mr. Schaefer.
Well, I just want everyone to know that I support Metro RTA, even though they told me that I'm not allowed to campaign on their buses. But the future is here already with them, right? They are already having electric buses that are solar panel charged. And I know right now they only have 4. They're looking to get some more. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great start. So I'd like to see Metro continue to invest in these solar powered electronic buses. And I would also like to see the city invest in more electric vehicles that would be powered by our new solar-powered municipal power plant, which is going to save everybody, including the city, lots and lots of money while protecting our environment at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilhite.
Any fuel efficiency that we can come up with is critically important, but this is an environmental forum, and you're looking for a leader that's going to take you in an environmental direction. I have done that my entire professional career. Over the course of the last 12 years, I've developed technology that allows small internal combustion engines to run on hydrogen. It works, we've proven it, we have patents that cover that. We are now poised as a state to create a hydrogen economy. They're looking at this state as being a hydrogen corridor. We are sitting on the Saudi Arabia of the most clean fuel we could possibly have, and that is water. Converted to hydrogen to run engines that will power everything from home generators to our cars. I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge of how that fuel works. That's the kind of leadership that you need, not just the immediate, but where can we go as a future? Where can we create a green economy? Where can we do all the things we've talked about here? I've been in the trenches, I've done it, and I've created technology to get us there. That's how you lead in a
mentioned water for fuel disappeared. I think you should look it up about how we split the oxygen with the hydrogen and are able to, actually power our vehicles. That is going to put a lot of people out of business.
No,
okay.
No,
not that one, no.
No,
But,
we can go on a complete debate on that. No, it will not.
not new people, but establishment. But yeah, so I would like to expand that though, and I want to make our scooters free that we have in the city as well. And we had partnered with Metro to make, the bus routes, more routine instead of waiting. I also want to focus on, like, when you have these questions, what comes to mind is like, why am I taking a kid home from coaching practice and it takes me 5 minutes to get him
alternative forms of transportation because Akron is very much a car-based city. We absolutely have to start with partnering with Metro. Metro and Don Disler Metro, the folks there have so many great ideas. They're really excited about transit-oriented development. There's a ton of federal money that can be earmarked for this purpose. And yet they've had a hard time getting their foot in the door for a conversation. We really want to make sure that there's affordable childcare down at the Metro Transit Center to make it easy Metro. Now, when it comes to other, I was just thinking, we're on Merriman Road right here, and when it comes to biking, bike lanes have been controversial in Akron. But it was often because of how it happens. If you just show up one day and the paint's on the road, of course people are going to be frustrated. Of course people are going to continue to use that bike lane as a right turn only lane onto Memorial Parkway. I've seen it time and time again. If there's a city where people are told and educated and shown things and explained things with respect, then they accept them better.
So another reason why bike lanes have been controversial is because the administration built this plan based on Copenhagen. And I'm just going to say Akron is not Copenhagen. So that's one. When we talk about transit, look, someone mentioned, I think it was you, Keith, mentioned the spin scooters. During my time as the Great Streets Administrator, we implemented micro mobility options with the spin scooters and now spin bikes as well. Because I have people who tell me, even now, who have businesses in Highland Square and say, those spin scooters have helped my bottom line because people who could not walk from downtown up to Highland Square can take one of those scooters. Look, I have a favorite Mexican food truck in North Hill, and I see people taking those spin scooters across the Y Bridge. So I think we have so many options from bus rapid transit, and also we need to make sure that we have a fast and effective transit from here to Cleveland and Canton.
Next question?
Yeah.
This one's a combination, and I will try my darndest, since we're running kind of low on time. There's a person in the audience who lives southwest corner of downtown, across from the Goodrich Brownfield plants about to be torn down, and has concerns, but also there's a concern for biodiversity. And someone else says, can't we just get rid of ChemLawn? The kinds of things that hurt the environment around here. So kind of the brownfield question going around with local biodiversity, single-use plastics, but we're mostly on biodiversity with ChemLawn and the brownfield. The person's very concerned about that brownfield. What do you do about those when they're there?
Well, I think that's a very good question. Look, I think that I don't think we can ban stuff like ChemLawn and stuff like that. It should seem like it would be viable. But I do think that we can do education and help people learn about organics and organic gardening and organic lawn care. And I think that would actually go pretty far in helping. I think we could work together with the residents in that area and see if we can't get them to switch to a more organic type of ChemLawn.
Well, I think the important part is to prevent the brownfield from happening in the beginning. And I did that as the founder of the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority. We created Ohio's first household hazardous waste recycling center. It is still in operation. It's in Stowe. That was a program that I was told when I proposed it that I was crazy, that nobody is going to drive with the materials in their car, take it to some place and dispose of it. Yes, they will, because when you give people the opportunity to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. That's been in place now over 20 years, and the millions and millions of pounds of chemicals like we're talking about, lawn fertilizer, paint, thinners, all of those things have not gone down the drain, haven't gone into the ground, and they've been recycled. My only regret is it's not open every day, every month. That's because of a budgetary issue and the amount of dollars that can keep it open. But the way you avoid that question is you start in the front end and don't allow brownfields to happen.
Mr. Mills.
So I would like to echo what Josh and Jeff said. Try to prevent it before it even happens. But Josh is right as well. How do you combat we've been predisposed, we've been, just, you go and treat your lawn, you go and, make sure that you do this, it's gotta be a certain way, and you do that through, inorganic chemicals. So I think the only way we can combat is through education, to make sure people know that is not your only option, to make sure people know that, hey, you're not doing this right. I've worked with a lot of guys who would just pour stuff on the ground, they don't really care, whatever, so how do we, with, oil and with, wax stripper and thinner, they'll just pour it out. So how we can only combat that through education and making sure everybody speaks up when you are working with these people, like, hey, don't do that. If you ever pay attention to the sewer grates, it actually says, hey, have a fish on there and say it's going right to the spillway. Okay, it's to try and help people be mindful of their environment.
So, when it comes to brownfields, Jeff's absolutely right. The first thing to do is to stop doing this in the first place. Right now, when we look at White Pond, the place is contaminated because the city allowed dumping there for a long time. When you look at the Central Interchange project right now, there's dumping that's going on right there. You can go back there and you can find where we dumped all the Canal Park seats that were renovated. So there's all kinds of ways in which we can work on that, and there's federal brownfield money. But the other piece is about education and awareness. There's a lot of things that we can educate and make people aware of when it comes to the environment. Pollinators, Nancy Holland would want me to shout out pollinators. But the fundamental thing is that everyone in this room would be willing, I think, I can volunteer you to be a partner with the city on some of this awareness. But not if there's a city government that you don't trust, that when you speak up, doesn't listen to you. So if there's a city government that builds trust, we can leverage the amazing talent and power in this community.
So when we talk about brownfield remediation, look, there are federal programs that we have to, as a city, really lean into. Look, I worked at the city the past several years, and I know that we didn't apply for that assistance until the last year in 2022. In my administration, we're going to be doing that each and every year, every time, because we have to get those allocated funds to address brownfield remediation. But beyond that, look, education is great and it's essential, but let's be really honest about this. We have to actually have tangible penalties for people who continue to dump things in our soil and actually make these brownfields happen. If there's no penalty, education will not matter as much. So it's time for real penalties and real enforcement for people who are breaking these rules.
So, Chris, I want to give you a chance to ask your question, but I'm going to just take my time. Environmental remediation is an issue that I spend a lot of time on. That's basically what my career is dedicated to, is finding money to get environmental sites remediated. And what I can say about that is you might just sit here and think, well, that's a federal government sort of thing. The federal government is going to be in charge of that, but that's not the case. Local communities matter. And what you need is infrastructure of people that give voice to communities who are being affected by the past industrial practices that are making people sick. You can go on a ProPublica website right now and find areas in Akron with enormous increases in cancer risk as a result of past industrial practices. There's not a plan right now for us to expedite cleaning those up, but they are causing cancer. Those fields and that industrial practices are causing cancer right now that needs to get fixed.
That, Mr. Schaefer, are you the last person?
You start.
You start. We are at the end of what we can do. There's a gentleman who wants to know which of you could possibly beat another candidate. But the question that I put out there, having done this for nigh on 30 years, it's the person you go vote for. If you don't vote, none of them win. And the person you referred to isn't here, so I'm not bringing it up. So go vote. That's my point. Thank you for your questions
Yes,
today.
please,
This has been a little difficult to get through. 2 hours is very long.
And remember, if you've moved or changed your name or
Yes.
changed your signature, you must re-register by the 3rd, or you'll have issues when you go into the voting booth. So please, please, please make sure you update your information with the Board of Elections in the next couple of days.
You can actually do it in the hallway with illegal new voters.
Even better yet.
Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause to the candidates? To our wonderful moderator as well. Thank you so much, Barry. I want to thank everybody that's in this room for being in this room. This is the first time Akron has ever talked about environmental issues with candidates. So thank you for being here. You know, there's been a lot of talk about, look at who's in the room, right? And we have a critical 4 years ahead of us as we face climate change. And we're gonna have to do it collaboratively. And we're gonna need to work together with with whoever, not just whoever wins, but all of you who have a passion around the environment. But also with all of us, right? And that's where we've seen environmental issues in our region stop headstrong short, is the unwillingness for people to work with the experts in the room. The questions that were asked for the first hour and a half were garnered from 30 different individuals that are either concerned citizens or area experts in these areas that have been told that they have to stay quiet and silent during this candidacy. And so they put forward over 100 questions that we synthesized into the questions that you saw today. There was probably about 6 more that we didn't get through. One thing that we will do moving forward is make sure that the candidates has a complete list of not just the questions from the area local experts that we synthesized through, but also the questions from the audience, which we tried to, mitigate that. We were going to put the ones forward that people weren't already answering from what the experts had already put forward. I would really want to sincerely thank everybody for being in this room. This is not just a one and done. You were asked to sign in, and when you signed in, we asked you if you were interested in larger environmental coalition work. Please say yes. It will start off with just some good networking and getting to know each other until we start moving forward on policy issues. We would like to move forward with policy issues with the candidates at the table. As we move forward looking into the next year and having new people seated in both the mayoral seat and city council, and looking at what real legislative and administrative decisions can be made to move us forward over the next 4 years. And we certainly invite all of you to be in that room and at those tables. My name is Beth Field. I help run the Big Love Network. We are Akron's environmental health equity organization. Next to me is the powerhouse that is Gina Burke. I'm very blessed that she's the head of our board, but she also helped run Greater Akron Innovation Network for Sustainability for many years and is her own wheelhouse of sustainability. So I want to pass the mic to my elder who always helps me through life as we deal with these issues and deal with a lot of red tape or just sort of slammed in our faces as we beg the city to not poison people. Let me hand this over to you.
Thanks, Beth. Again, just want to thank all of you. You've always been there for the last several decades that I've been involved in sustainability in this area. And I love you. We love Akron. We're here to support you. So let's keep going. And let's think of the most important thing right now. We are in a historic moment like never before. We can't predict the future at all, but we can begin to change our mindset. Like immediately, not think about changing it, not talk about changing it, right? From scarcity to abundance. This room represents the abundance of the social capital that this city has. And it has, this community has stood up. They are the experts. They are the ones that begged you not, begged the city not to destroy White Pine. We are begging you not to destroy Tice Woods, not to destroy the watershed of the Cotton River or any other watershed, the one that goes south, right? It's time that we think forward with, right now, we've got 7 years to meet huge targets, and we have an abundance of federal dollars. And to look at a simple decision like, we're gonna have to buy police cars in a few years. Those are regular procurement dollars for the city. I was at a meeting where Ford is developing electric vehicles, police cars that will go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Right? That's terrifying. But that's what will be available. And the cost of keeping old cars and old systems will then become burdensome at a level we can't deal with. We're having historic monies put before us to go forward. And we invite you to walk this way, go around, go to the section over there where we laid out what is being done today. There's protocol for how to develop eco-districts. I'm on the board of the U.S. Green Building Council for Northeast Ohio. We are regional with three or four other states. The state of Ohio is #1 in the world in green schools. We never even had a conversation in Akron about whether or not we build a green school or not. We're #7 in green housing. That's affordable housing. Because of Cincinnati and Cleveland. We never even talk about whether or not that building will be green. It has to be. Fundamentally, has to be. It's what happens here, literally, is we have banks who go, well, we don't know if we can invest in that HVAC system, and so you have the developers who said, oh, we'll charge a premium for standard HVAC systems that meet green codes. So it's a game that we're being it's corrupt, and Akron looks like we are idiots. That's not attractive. Anybody want to live here? It's stupid. So, encourage you to see what we can do. I've seen it happen. Take a trip north, 35 miles. Cleveland's doing it. Columbus is doing it. Cincinnati's doing it. Cleveland has stated, new county executive has called that Cleveland will become the clean water capital of the world. That means Akron has the opportunity to play in that game. The Gorge Dam's coming down, hundreds of millions of dollars investment. That's our future. So this is the most critical moment Athens ever had. Thank you again for being willing to step up to be our mayor. Thank you.
Yeah.